Most people believe they're bad with money. But here's what the data actually shows. The average person will earn over $2 million in their lifetime. Yet 78% will retire financially dependent on others. The problem isn't the amount coming in. It's a design flaw in how the system teaches people to use it. Financial freedom operates on a simple equation. Assets must generate more income than expenses require. When passive income exceeds monthly costs, work becomes optional. The threshold isn't as distant as most imagine. Someone spending $3,000 per month needs just $900,000 invested at a 4% return. Yet the median retirement account balance for Americans aged 55 to 64 sits at $71,000. A gap this consistent across millions of people isn't about individual failure. It's structural. The modern financial system evolved to optimize for consumption, not accumulation. Every institution touching money takes a cut from the flow, not the stock. Banks profit when people borrow. Retailers profit when people buy. Employers profit by minimizing what they pay. The entire apparatus generates revenue by keeping money in motion. This creates a hidden curriculum taught through 10,000 micro decisions: financing the car, upgrading the phone, buying the slightly better apartment. Each choice appears reasonable in isolation. Together, they form a pattern. The pattern ensures most people convert income into lifestyle at roughly the same rate it arrives. Here's where the math becomes revealing. Consider two people earning $60,000 annually. Person A spends $55,000 and invests $5,000. Person B spends $45,000 and invests $15,000 after 1 year. The difference seems modest, $10,000. After 10 years, assuming 7% returns, person A has accumulated $69,000. Person B has accumulated $207,000. After 30 years, person A reaches $472,000. Person B reaches $1.4 million. The gap isn't 3 times larger. It's exponential. Yet the spending difference is just $10,000 per year, less than $30 per day. Most people unconsciously choose person A's path by treating investing as what's done with leftover money, rather than treating spending as what's done with leftover money. The invisible error is sequence. Traditional advice says, earn, spend on needs, spend on wants, save what remains. This framework guarantees lifestyle expands to meet income, because human needs and wants are elastic concepts. The rent that felt expensive becomes normal within 3 months. The salary that felt generous becomes barely enough within 6. Hedonic adaptation isn't a flaw in human psychology. It's a feature that made ancestors survive by always seeking more. But in an environment designed to convert seeking into spending, this feature becomes a liability. The solution isn't more discipline applied to the same sequence. It's reversing the sequence entirely. Wealth accumulation requires treating investment as a non-negotiable expense that happens first, not last. This model is called paying yourself first, but the phrase understates its power. When someone commits to investing 20% before seeing their paycheck, something shifts. The remaining 80% becomes the constraint within which life gets designed. Lifestyle shapes itself around what's available, just as it always has. But now it's shaping around a smaller number by default. The sacrifice feels enormous in contemplation. In practice, most people adapt within 60 to 90 days and report no decrease in life satisfaction. The difference is that their wealth begins compounding in the background, whether they think about it or not. Take someone earning $75,000 who believes they've optimized their budget, they track expenses, use coupons, negotiate bills, they're saving 8%, roughly $500 monthly. They feel responsible, but scan the expenses and a pattern emerges. $600 monthly for a car payment on a vehicle worth $35,000, $200 for subscription services that replaced what used to be one-time purchases, $400 for eating out because cooking takes time they don't have. None of these feel extravagant. All are normalized in their social circle. The optimization is happening within a frame that was never questioned. If this person sold the financed car, bought a $12,000 reliable used vehicle, and cut subscriptions and dining by half, they'd free up $800 monthly with zero income change. That's $1,600 total to invest. Over 30 years at 7% returns, that's $1.8 million. The efficiency was solving the wrong problem. Here's the paradox. Higher earners often reach freedom slower than modest earners with better systems. A household making $200,000 assumes wealth will come automatically. Meanwhile, they're locked into $7,000 monthly expenses, premium daycare, a mortgage sized to their income. They're saving more in absolute terms, but the same percentage, meaning their timeline to freedom hasn't shortened. Meanwhile, someone earning $50,000 who caps their lifestyle at $35,000 and invests the difference builds a gap that compounds faster than raises typically arrive. The question isn't how much someone makes. It's how wide the gap is between what comes in and what goes out, and how long that gap is maintained. Money has a strange property. Spending it produces immediate, visible results, while investing, it produces invisible results for years. New furniture changes the room today. $1,000 invested changes nothing visible for a decade. Human brains evolved to prioritize immediate, tangible feedback. This works against accumulation in an environment where the most powerful financial tool, compound growth, is completely imperceptible in year one. A person investing $500 monthly at 7% gains just $420 in profit the first year, barely noticeable. By year 20, that same $500 monthly contribution generates over $5,000 in annual growth from compounding alone. But year 20 feels abstract. Year 1 feels like deprivation. Most people quit before compounding becomes visible. Someone gets promoted and moves from $55,000 to $70,000 annually. Their first thought isn't about investing the $15,000 raise. It's about finally affording what their peers already have. The comparison group silently shifts upward with the income. Coworkers at the new level drive certain cars, live in certain neighborhoods, vacation in certain places. The social pressure isn't explicit. It's atmospheric. Within 18 months, the $70,000 earner has upgraded rent, car, and discretionary spending. The bank account looks nearly identical to when they earned less. The raise vanished into lifestyle calibration. If instead they'd maintained the $55,000 lifestyle and invested every dollar of the raise, they'd be adding $15,000 annually to wealth. Over 20 years, that's $730,000. The promotion had the potential to cut a decade off the path to freedom. Instead, it bought nicer things. Reaching financial freedom requires changing the question from "what can I afford?" to "what does wealth cost in time?" A $40 dinner doesn't cost $40. At a 7% return over 30 years, it costs $305 in future wealth. A $30,000 car costs $228,000 in opportunity cost. This isn't about never spending. It's about seeing the trade. Most financial advice focuses on restrictions. Don't buy the coffee, skip the vacation, drive the old car. This triggers psychological resistance because humans hate loss. The reframe is purchase cost in freedom. That car doesn't cost $30,000. It costs 3 years of required work. That question changes behavior without requiring discipline. When spending is measured in days of life rather than dollars, priorities clarify automatically. Freedom doesn't come from winning the income lottery or finding the perfect investment. It comes from building a system where wealth accumulates as a byproduct of normal life, not as a reward for extraordinary discipline. Automate investment contributions the day income arrives. Make the default path lead toward accumulation. Design friction into spending by adding delays or approval steps for purchases above certain thresholds. Remove friction from investing by never requiring a decision. The goal is to make building wealth the path of least resistance. Motivation fails, systems persist. Someone relying on discipline to invest will lose to someone who never sees the money in their checking account because it routes automatically to index funds. Financial freedom timelines compress dramatically under consistent execution. Someone investing 15% of a $50,000 income, assuming 3% annual raises and 7% returns, reaches independence in 32 years. Increase the savings rate to 30%, and the timeline drops to 21 years. Maintain spending while income grows, investing all raises, and it drops to 16 years. The difference between a lifetime of required work and 2 decades of accumulation often comes down to decisions made in the first 5 years of earning. Most people miss this window entirely because they're told wealth is for later, after the house, after the kids, after stability. By the time later arrives, the math has become almost impossible. The people who reach financial freedom share one non-obvious trait. They treat their future selves as a creditor who gets paid first. Not after the bills, not after the fun, not if there's enough left over. First, this mental model transforms the relationship with money from a flow to be managed into a system with a primary obligation. Everything else negotiates for what remains. It sounds restrictive. In practice, it's liberating. Knowing the investment is handled eliminates the background anxiety about whether enough is being saved. The remaining money can be spent without guilt because the system is working. Guilt-free spending and aggressive wealth building aren't opposites. They're the result of the same well-designed system. Standard financial education teaches budgeting, credit scores, and loan terms. It doesn't teach the wealth equation or opportunity cost or sequence priority. This isn't an accident. An educated population that invests 30% of income and resists lifestyle inflation would restructure entire industries. The system needs consumers, not capital allocators. The knowledge gap isn't a failure of schools. It's a feature of an economy designed around flow. Learning the actual mechanics of wealth building requires going outside the curriculum society provides. It requires treating financial independence as a skill to be developed rather than a destination that arrives through luck or hard work alone. The gap between financial dependence and financial freedom isn't as wide as the gap between poverty and middle class. It's narrower. Most people already earn enough. They're simply running the wrong program with the money. A few structural changes, a shift in sequence, treating future wealth as non-negotiable, and the outcome changes entirely. The path isn't hidden. It's ignored because it conflicts with how everyone around them operates. But that conflict is exactly what makes it work. Markets reward scarcity. In a world where most people consume every dollar, the ones who don't stand in a category of their own, the question isn't whether it's possible. The data proves it is. The question is whether someone is willing to run a different program than the one they were handed. This explains why the pattern exists, but it doesn't explain the single biggest mistake people make once they start investing, the one that costs them 7 figures without them ever knowing. That's next.